they've asked us through this project to help catalyze kind of a sector partnership in Montana, but it also puts us in an interesting place. As Lindsay will share with you later, it's important in sector partnerships that these initiatives are really industry-driven and driven by the needs of businesses. And so our overall goal is to help launch this effort, to help fund some of the initial stages of it, part of which will be today in terms of learning what sector partnership is and how we might all benefit from successful partnership in Montana. And to help do a little bit in addition in terms of training people in terms of how to take some of the initial steps in implementing a sector partnership. And then our objective as a project team is really to get out of the way and let this be an industry-driven effort, industry-driven initiative with an industry-driven scope. And that scope could be, you know, again, it's going to be industry-driven and will be determined by what folks want to get out of it. Selfishly, what we're hoping will come out of it, at least one of the pieces, will be a discussion, an industry-wide discussion of workforce needs. And our, you know, again, our selfish hope out of that is to get a better understanding of across, most specifically the manufacturing and energy industries, of what needs aren't being met right now in our workforce development system. And through understanding that, you know, we'll be able to better adapt and better meet those needs moving forward. So it should just be one piece of what a successful sector partnership would be about, but it'll be an important piece for us and kind of why we're excited and enthusiastic about helping launch this initiative at this point. So we've in order to help achieve that, we went out and we found Lindsay Woolsey. If Lindsay's not the industry-leading expert in sector partnerships, she's certainly amongst the top folks in the nation, and so we've been really excited to be able to bring her on and are excited to have her have an opportunity to chat with you today. We've also partnered with Montana Manufacturing Extension Center, and they'll be part of our team in helping, you know, again, implement some of the initial stages of this initiative as well. So there's a lot to learn. I think there's a lot to be gained from this. We invite input, feedback from you at any point, but again, at some point, we're really looking to hand the reins over to business and to the champions of business here in Montana, and look forward to just playing a part in that. Without further ado, then, I also have the great privilege of working with Pam Busey, Commissioner of Montana Department of Labor and Industry, and also with Dr. John Seck, the Deputy Commissioner of Higher Education here in the state. And I want to hand the floor over to them just for some brief words as well before we give Lindsay the floor and can all kind of sit back and learn more about next generation sector partnerships. So, Commissioner Busey, can I hand the mic over to you?
Sure. Thanks so much, Matt, and thanks everyone else for being here. Can everyone hear me okay?
Pam, I can hear you.
Okay. I'll just give you real quick an even broader perspective of why this is so important, why it's important to the U.S. Department of Labor and to Governor Bullock. As we have recently come out of a recessionary economy where certainly my agency and many agencies were scrambling to find workers jobs, we're now entering this post-recession where we in Montana have an unemployment rate of only 4.3%, which is what most economists say is good, healthy, robust. It means proper amount of job churning. And we are also encountering in Montana an aging workforce unlike any other state, where we have 137,000 people eligible to retire in the next 4 years, and the group of workers, young workers, 16 to 24, that can take those jobs is only at 113,000. So not only are we hearing from the private sector about a lack of skills, we simply don't have enough workers to fill the current demand for jobs. So our goal, the governor's, and I think the United States Department of Labor, is to address anecdotally what our new economy looks like. It's very different than the economy of 10 years ago. For example, construction in Montana is far from pre-recession level employment. And manufacturing, which is great for this grant, is really growing in Montana. So it's critical that we all join forces and we really understand what it is that our private sector needs to create kinds of jobs and skills, both hard and soft skills, that our industry demands. So I think that's an important part of this grant. It's also an important part of the Governor's Main Street Montana project, and one of the most significant developments of that project is the Governor's Key Industry Networks. He's created 12 sector networks. We've tried very hard to align those networks with things that are already going on or groups that are already going on, and I think this is a good example. We've tried to coordinate and get people that are involved as leaders in the Rev Up grant, are also some of the leaders on the Key Industry Network, to make sure that we're not wasting anyone's time. We're coordinating our efforts and our resources, because both the Department of Labor in the state of Montana and the Department of Labor in this country, I think you'll hear from Dr. Speck, we are dying for private sector input, and we really need to make sure that we're using what limited resources we have to do the best work to get you the workers that you need. So we, again, are coordinating with the Governor's Main Street project. We also have a sector strategies on our State Workforce Investment Board. We've tried to make sure those people are all included so that we really are streamlining and keeping everyone in the loop and not duplicating any efforts, because we know how important it is, how important your time is, but more importantly, how important it is to Montana's economy to make sure we're getting workers trained in as efficient way as possible. That's it for me, Matt.
Thanks, Commissioner Busey. And Dr. Speck, can I invite you to say a few words as well?
Thanks, Matt, and thanks, Commissioner Busey, for your comments. I would just like to echo what the Commissioner said and just speak on behalf of our state's public two-year colleges and 3 community college districts that we are committed to working together with business and industry to really do an even better job of addressing workforce development needs across the state. We're also very excited about the partnership and opportunities that we've had working with the Montana Department of Labor and Industry. Working together, we've been very successful over the past few years in securing some very important U.S. Department of Labor workforce grants. One that is probably very directly related is the Rev Up Montana grant, which is a coalition of about 15 different colleges from across the state that's really focused on advanced manufacturing and energy workforce development. Rev Up Montana has, as many of you may know, over 100 industry partners at the table. And the second grant that I'll just mention very briefly is Healthcare Montana, which is a coalition of about 19 different colleges and agencies working together to focus on healthcare training. I think the sector strategy and the partnerships related to sector strategies is very, very important with all of those initiatives. And as Commissioner Busey said, I think the key thing really important is the fact that as we move forward with all of this work, that it's done so with full partnership with industry, because we need to work together so that as a coalition of colleges, we're preparing students who are really prepared to go into the workplace and move into positions that the industry sectors are interested in. Just one more figure I'll give you that complements Commissioner Busey's. We know that in Montana we have about 137,000 people who have some college and are between 25 and 60, but have never completed a post-secondary credential. So, you know, as we move forward with this work, we really want to tap into those people, help them see the benefit of earning a industry-recognized credential or a post-secondary certification and preparing for the workplace, and really to improve their lives and ability to care for their families, as well as provide a better workforce for industry. So, Matt, I'll pause there.
Thank you both. Those comments are helpful, and I appreciate you both being willing to be a part of this important conversation today as well. Lindsay, before we pass the mic off to you, Katie, for those people that have dialed into the WebEx conference, I want to make sure that we have an opportunity for those folks to ask questions as we move through the discussion today. So would you be willing to kind of run us through some of the functionality on here before Lindsay jumps in?
Yeah, Matt. So if you're on your computer and you look at the bottom kind of right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a button you can push for raise your hand. So for those of you who are doing this web-based, you can go ahead and click on that, and that will let one of us know that there's a question, and we can stop and have you ask that for us. For those of you who are calling in the conference call that are not connected through the computer, if you speak, we'll actually hear you, so you'll kind of talk over us a little bit, but we'll try to use that as a cue to pause and listen to any questions you have. And we'll also have some time at the end of the presentation if you want to ask questions at that point as well. I think that's probably everything everyone needs to know, Matt.
Fantastic, thank you. So, without further ado, Lindsay, the floor is yours. What the heck are sector partnerships?
Great, thank you so much. And I just want to do a sound check as well. Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Matt. So thank you, everybody, and I'm thrilled that Montana is at this point where you can take some of the foundational work that you've already done in sector strategies and really launch it forward. And really kudos to leadership in Montana at all levels. Everything from really hearing from Commissioner Busey and Commissioner Seck today to activity going on in the governor's office, activity obviously going on all across Montana's colleges and technical schools, activity within the workforce investment system. I have had the privilege really for the past 10 years to watch and learn from what's going on inside of Montana, and I can say that I feel like right now there's more opportunity than ever for lots of reasons to embrace the sector partnership model going forward. And so I'll get into a little bit more of that as we go forth with this presentation. Before I get started, just a little bit about me. My name is Lindsay Woolsey. I reside in Washington State, but I work all over the country. I work almost exclusively in the field of sector and cluster strategy, and we don't need to worry about too much what those terms mean. What I do is work at the community level to connect education and training, as well as community-based organizations, economic development partners, and others with the needs of their most critical industries. I also work at the state policy level. And so what that means is, how does a state, whether it's education leadership, workforce leadership, labor leadership, governor's office leadership, how do they act to create the right conditions for success at the regional and local level for these types of partnerships with industry? I've worked in 16 different states and 14 different industries, and I'm thrilled that Montana has an opportunity to focus on manufacturing and energy. Commissioner Seck, I was excited to hear as well that there are healthcare activities going on healthcare and manufacturing are two of the most popular sector partnerships across the country for obvious reasons. Manufacturing is clearly strong and growing, and healthcare is one of those job-providing industries in almost every community. So I'm going to jump into the presentation. Just a note, and Matt knows this, I want this to be relatively informal. Sometimes I get carried away with my own material. So interrupt, raise your hands, ask questions. Matt is going to help monitor those questions, and will interrupt me so that we can get to those questions. We will also have time at the end of the presentation, but please, I encourage you to think of questions as we go, and we can address them. So here is what we're talking about, just so that we are starting off with a very common definition of what a sector partnership or an industry partnership is. And by the way, these are called lots of different things all over the country. Skills panels here in Washington State, industry partnerships in Pennsylvania, skills alliances in Illinois, clusters of opportunity in California. But regardless of their name, they are regional. They are partnerships of companies within one target industry that work closely with government, education and training, economic development, labor and community organizations to focus on the workforce and other competitiveness needs of that industry. And I highlight and emphasize other competitiveness needs because traditionally, sector partnerships have exclusively focused on workforce. But what we found over the decades of sector strategy experience is that more broad-based sector partnerships that focus on more than just education and training tend to sustain themselves longer. And we will get into the why and the how of that shortly. This last sentence here, these regional partnerships may or may not have support from the state or federal level, is also important and indicative of another turning point in the history of sector strategies. There was a time, not so long ago, 10 years ago, where regional sector partnerships were pretty flush with cash. There were foundations that were funding them, and there were federal agencies as well. And then we went through a bit of a dry spell where, in fact, these investors decided we need to make sure these partnerships are real and up and running for the right reasons before we actually invest money in them. And so now what you see are thousands of sector partnerships across the country that do not necessarily exist because of a grant. They exist because there's a need, and they exist because there's a coalition of the willing, if you will, of community support partners and organizations, as well as industry leaders that come together. Incidentally, when these partnerships are up and running, they tend to be magnets for further investment. A quick graphic, just so you know kind of the who needs to be involved. These are absolutely led by industry. And so this graphic shows that in the big blue circles. You absolutely have to have champions, leaders, civic entrepreneurs, whatever you want to call them, representing your target industry, sitting at your table of a sector partnership. They're the ones who name their priorities for their industry in their regional labor market, and they are the ones, too, that hopefully roll up their sleeves and put some skin in the game around types of solutions and shared coordinated efforts to really leverage those priorities and opportunities that they've named. But around this table, you also must have a diverse range of what I call community support partners or strategic partners. This is everything from K through 12 and adult basic education, your community and technical colleges, universities, community-based organizations, human service organizations, organized labor where it is important in a region or an industry, and any of your workforce investment team or workforce training team. This also includes economic development, regional economic development, county economic development, city economic development, your chambers of commerce. Every region, as you all well know, probably has multiple economic development entities. Now, key to the success here is that yellow triangle, and that is the convener, or called a coordinator, called a facilitator. You can call it whatever you want. But this individual or this organization is responsible for facilitating the progress of the partnership. This individual and organization must be neutral. They can't bring their own agenda. They have to be able to facilitate the industry members in a way that really creates an industry-driven agenda. And they also have to be able to facilitate and coordinate across the multiple strategic partners, who, by the way, sometimes bring their own agenda. And so this convener has to really, truly not only be able to neutrally facilitate the public support partners on one side and the industry members driving the agenda on the other side, but they have to do it with tact. They have to have credibility with all of the partners, public and private, and they have to be able to say, this is what the priority is now, and this is how we will be able to put the solution together with all of us at the table. Some priorities, therefore, sometimes get waylaid, and that's okay. Part of the learning curve of sector partnerships is that employer partners as well as public strategic support partners learn how to make sure you're concentrating and focusing on the 1, 2, maybe 3 top priorities of industry. And that sometimes that means certain things that were on others' agendas previously may come up later. So again, all that to say that there is a process to this, and in some places, sector partnerships have become the way of doing business, and the process is much easier, and in other places, there's quite a steep learning curve to really make the shift to a truly industry-driven agenda.
Lindsay, so we have a question in, and I'm sure this varies in all the projects you've worked in, but can you just give us one example of a convener that's been successful in another state that you've worked in?
Absolutely, and great question. And what we see across the country is that almost any organization can play the role of convener. Again, as long as they bring credibility from the industry's perspective and from the community support partner perspective. And so we see workforce investment teams or individuals playing this role. We absolutely see chambers of commerce, economic development, community-based organizations like Goodwill or United Way. We see community and technical colleges playing this role as well. And in addition to credibility with the industry, it also just really takes an organization who is willing to put in at least a little bit of staff time up front to organize and to really cultivate a good sector partnership. And so that's the makings of a good convener. Spokane is one of my favorite examples, and here's why. Spokane, Washington has been operating sector partnerships for almost 10 years. They have 5 operating sector partnerships right now. The energy and the professional services partnerships are operated by their community and technical college. They are the convener. But around that table sit the Chamber of Commerce, other economic development, and the workforce team from Spokane and even across the border into Idaho. The Workforce Development Council in Spokane, meanwhile, operates the construction and the healthcare sector partnerships. Now, all of the colleges, of course, sit around the table as support partners. The Chamber of Commerce convenes their manufacturing partnership. So there's 5 different sector partnerships, but the convening role is shared across key organizations. All of the organizations sit as support partners. So hopefully that gives you maybe a good image of what this can look like.
Just as a follow-up, my own curiosity, do you see a trend when there is a bad convener? I mean, is there a group or an entity that consistently has pitfalls? Or?
Well, it's going to work, but
that's a great question. I think over the years we have seen where certain types of organizations have had to rapidly evolve and, in fact, change quite dramatically how they do business. Community and technical colleges are certainly one of those, where good community and technical colleges understand the difference. Should we ask folks to mute their line, perhaps not? I'm hearing a little bit of background noise.
So that I don't have to drive to Fairfield and...
Yes, I think specifically if you're calling user 11, we might be able to hear you.
Thank you, Matt. So community colleges have had to make a pretty significant shift over the years from their traditional advisory boards, which, as everyone knows probably, are incredibly important, required, in fact, to make sure that we are keeping curriculum and credentials up to date with certain target sectors. And there has had to be a real shift, I think, in the best places where community colleges recognize they need to expand the role and the scope of their very specific industry advisory boards. And it has taken a willingness by college faculty and staff to say, yes, we see that the industry needs to talk about more than just our credential and our curriculum. We need to allow them to really talk about their other growth needs, even if we're talking supply chain mapping, which has nothing to do with whether our CNC machinist program has the right level of blueprint reading. I'm making this up, but these are, that's a very specific example, I think, of a system and a set of potential organizations that have come a long way. There's still a long way to go across the country, but they've certainly changed. Economic development as well, as you have seen probably, hopefully, just in national dialogue, starting to truly understand how talent and training and education is a core piece to the very definition of good economic development. That's a dramatic shift from 10 years ago. And so we're seeing where chambers are able to convene sector partnerships effectively because they're willing to broaden the conversation as well.
Thanks.
So I think I've probably hit on some of what this next slide is meant to portray. It's fair to say that there is an extended family of sector-like strategies across the country, and that's because the field has undergone evolution in the past 10 years, and frankly, even in the past 3 to 5 years, quite dramatically. And so on the lower left, your lower left, you'll see a set of branches that really are specific to industry-informed training. And in fact, very traditionally and in the early days of sector strategies and initiatives were only about training, and they very specifically targeted only entry-level and low-skilled positions. Fast forward to today, and what you'll see is the top branch, broad-based sector or industry partnerships, where the priorities include education and training, workforce development, and economic development. And a little bit more about why. What we've discovered is that when you ask industry members to engage around one very specific topic, like here's a set of curriculum and a credential, please help us understand if it's accurate and up to date. They will engage and they will answer exactly what you're asking. But they may not stay engaged. They may not stay engaged for the length of time that you need them. They may not engage at the depth that you would want, including putting skin in the game and actually putting in-kind and financial resources into education and training initiatives. And the reason is that, frankly, there's just not enough for them to chew on. And so what we have noticed is that partnerships that can broaden the conversation offer more for companies to engage around. So you'll have a set of manufacturers, for example, who get really into the entry-level positions and training and building the career pathway programs that are necessary to really get folks into these jobs. And you'll have a set of manufacturers who really are into supply chain mapping or transportation efficiencies, community-focused initiatives, et cetera. And when you invite them to participate at that broader level, what you get is deeper participation and for a longer term. And where sector initiatives traditionally and historically have failed is that they are not self-sustaining. And it's because they have not engaged employers in ways that keep them engaged and at the table and in the conversation. And this is where we became very, very reliant on grants and on funding for this stuff. And what we've learned now is we have to take a different approach so that we're not grant dependent, but that we're actually creating sustainable industry partnerships. So if it hasn't become clear, just a few bullets here on what today's industry partnerships look like. They are employer-driven, they are regional. Even in a state like Montana, that has broad geographic areas, sparsely populated, you will still find that there are concentrations of like companies. And so regional really matters, because you're going to find that manufacturers in the Northwest are going to be very, very different than the manufacturers in Bozeman, or the energy-related manufacturing that you might find in the Billings area, et cetera. They are convened by a credible third party. The partnerships themselves act as a coordinating body across multiple strategic partner organizations. Because they are industry-driven, they create highly customized responses to whatever that industry is needing or recognizing as a big opportunity. They are about more than workforce training. A big shift, they treat employers as partners, not just customers. This is part of the learning curve I was talking about earlier. And they are not a grant program, a short-term project, or a passing fad. They are certainly not a passing fad. Sector Strategies now have been in operation across the country for well over 30 years, and probably far beyond that, just not tracked. They are different from your state workforce investment board, your regional boards, your chambers, your industry associations, your community college advisory boards, even a career pathway employer group. And you could probably guess the reasons why for most of these. Your state workforce investment board, or even your regional city economic development boards and chambers, the big reason is that these all represent multiple industries. In the ideal situation, they bring the industry voice forward, but they do so in a cross-industry way. I like to think of it kind of as a horizontal approach across multiple different types of industries. A sector partnership focuses on one industry, a shared industry. An industry association, though, that may also focus just on one industry is different. And it's different in most places because often industry associations are statewide, and so they are trying to collect the like needs from many different communities, from, say, manufacturing or from healthcare, et cetera. Sometimes as a result of being statewide, they focus just on maybe one or two big issues that might be good for a legislative agenda, might be good for things like marketing and branding, but they do not get into the depth that a regional sector partnership focusing on one industry can really get to. Different from your community college advisory boards, like I said before, community college advisory boards traditionally really are there to ask the question, is our curriculum right? Are our credentials right? Sector partnerships go further. Same with the career pathway employer group. Career pathway employer groups are a set of employers that are asked to advise on the creation of a career pathway system for their industry. A sector partnership, in the best cases, will actually do that too, in addition to perhaps other priorities that employers might be interested in.
This is Matt. Just we've had a comment. We have about 40 people that are on the phone calling in. So if we have a really visual slide like this one, we might want to describe it a little bit too.
Oh, excellent. So I'm sorry, Matt. So unable to see the screen, but they can hear. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Got it. Okay. So this next slide is just a very quick map of the United States, and it is showing that in more than half of states across the country, so at least 25 states, are finding ways to create really good sector partnerships within their regional economies. And this is just more testimony to why sector partnerships are no longer talked about as a grant or a one-time initiative. They really are becoming the way to do business for multiple strategic partners. And so the next slide is just an example. I'm going to show a few of these. This is a map of the state of Colorado, and I purposely chose 3 western states because, in my opinion, sector partnerships look quite different out here in the West than what they look like back east, just because of the nature of geographies and the nature of industry. So this is the state of Colorado. Colorado has been at sector partnerships, if you will, for about 7 or 8 years, but it's only been in the past 2 years that they have very aggressively pursued capacity building, training, technical assistance, just some really good hands-on know-how, if you will, to all of the stakeholders that matter on the ground to industry partnerships. So that includes industry, it includes community and technical colleges, universities and K through 12 as well, and it includes economic development entities and workforce training teams and job centers. So this map shows 14 different economic regions in the state of Colorado. Each one of those economic regions has at least one sector partnership up and running, but in some cases there are up to 5 sector partnerships up and running. All of this has happened in the past 2 years, and you'll see partnerships in energy, in manufacturing, in healthcare, in the creative industries, in tourism, transportation and logistics, natural resources. You will see almost every industry that Colorado has that drives its overall economy. Similarly, on the next slide,
Just a question associated with that is, just to highlight it again, is it industry that's determining where these regions should be?
So that's a terrific question. So yes and no. What happened in Colorado is the Colorado Department of Employment and Labor partnered with the Colorado Office of Economic Development, and they created these economic regions. And this is similar to what the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act is asking every state to do, is to create and identify economic regions. But those economic regions for Colorado really just became the starting place to think about the right geographic footprint for a sector partnership. The reality is that there are many partnerships that represent one corner of Region 2, one corner of Region 12, and another corner of Region 3. In other cases, you will find sector partnerships that operate completely within just their region. It totally depends on that regional industry's true regional labor market. So I won't go into too much more depth, but these next slides show Arizona has a very similar map of its sector partnerships, and you will see it's 9 or so counties here, and again, they just used the counties as their starting place to figure out their sector partnerships, but they too have sector partnerships that cross over from county to county. You'll see all different kinds of industries. It is fascinating. Everything from border security to even an industry focused on criminal justice, to energy, manufacturing, healthcare, mining. They have a viticulture sector partnership, one of my favorites. You'll see all different kinds of industries, and there's a reason for that, right? Every economy has different industries that really drive their growth. And last one that I'll show you is the state of Oregon, and the reason I wanted to show you Oregon is that this is actually their vision of the future. They are just embarking on a pretty aggressive, what I would call next generation sector partnership initiative. And they have identified through data and through some significant regional community convenings the industries that truly drive their regional economies. So Eastern Oregon is focusing on the food chain cluster, as well as healthcare, manufacturing, and forestry. You'll see in the Portland area manufacturing, technology, construction, and healthcare. You'll see out on the coast things like marine products and food and beverage manufacturing. Each of these regions in the next year will launch at least one sector partnership. They will expand their existing partnerships, and you'll find one, Lane County, which is very aggressive on their sector partnership plans. They've already launched their technology partnership and a manufacturing partnership, and they will be launching healthcare and financial by the end of the year. And I highlight that because Lane County very quickly realized once we get this under our belt, we get how quickly we can organize ourselves in an industry-focused way and be more effective.
Lindsay, just a quick comment for those of you that can't see the slide. For both Arizona and Colorado, the state was fairly evenly chopped up. But in Oregon, we probably see something more like what we might see in Montana with big swaths of the state, big stripes of the state focusing on one area, whereas on the coast, in the more populated areas, those chunks begin to get smaller.
That's a great point, Matt. So just a little bit of background, why sector partnerships? And I realize that I'm kind of backtracking here, but I wanted you to have a really good idea of what a sector partnership is and what sector partnerships can look and feel like. But if we back up and ask the question, why are we doing this anyway? Some of what you'll see on this slide is very similar to what Commissioner Busey and SEC commented on. There is an increasing debate, increasing as in hard to believe, but we're still talking about a significant skills mismatch, a skills gap in our economy. Now, this varies by regional economy and it varies by industry. But it is assumed and fair to say that all industries are expecting a higher level of skills and a higher level of some type of credential that proves an individual job seeker has those skills that will make them successful on the job. And so if we keep hearing this over and over and over again from every industry that matters to our regional economy, we must do something about this. I'm fascinated to hear the statistics in Montana. I hadn't heard them for a while, that 137,000 eligible to retire, but the youth pipeline only gives us 113,000. Commissioner Seck, I'm not sure if I heard it right, but was the same number you said 137 actually under the age of 60 that are potentially poised to get a post-secondary credential? I wasn't sure if that was a coincidence that those numbers are the same in terms of eligible to retire and eligible to go through the pipeline of post-secondary education. So I just wanted to check that because that was really interesting, and we can come back to that. I'm not sure if they're still on the line. I'll assume we can come back to that, but it was an interesting, perhaps juxtaposition, and clearly a big opportunity for Montana. If in fact there is a number of individuals set to retire and a number of individuals that need good jobs, and so what does that mean in terms of rapid reskilling and upskilling? Clearly, this all matters because. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, I can't answer the numbers question for you, but I can tell you with great certainty that there aren't enough people in the pipeline, young people in our pipeline, to fill the existing job gaps. And we know that we would have to be successful in getting a number of non-traditional students to come back to college in order to fill the existing skills mismatch in Montana. So it's been a focus to understand we need to be successful in outreach to that non-traditional student population as well.
Great, that's helpful. So clearly, because of that, because Montana is in such a tight labor economy, and because all of this must be addressed with what I think we can just expect for the duration, fewer and tighter resources. And this is true on the workforce side as well as the education side. We're always asked to do more with less. So part of the reason sector partnerships have come about is because we truly cannot do this alone. And we cannot expect to solve these problems just as programs and as public programs, whether we are education or workforce training or whether we're economic development or human service agencies. And so without industry as partners and really helping us to understand how to develop the right solutions, we're not going to get very far very fast. And I think that's probably stating the obvious. But here's just a little bit of reminder of nationally where we have been. Education, it's fair to say, across the country, this may not be true for Montana, historically a train and pray. Not so much responsible for do our people get jobs in our economies and in the jobs that are making up our state or regional economies. Instead, it was about completion and degrees. And it's fair to say now that we cannot keep doing that. We have to understand, where do our people go once they complete? Where do our people go once they get out of school with a degree in their hand? Is that degree actual currency in our labor market? Because otherwise we've done an incredible disservice to our job seekers and students. So what has happened is there's been a re-take-up, if you will, of this concept of career pathways. And here is just one way to graphically see what a career pathway is. You all have your own versions, which is a terrific thing. The difference probably between the career pathway conversation today and the career pathway conversation of years past is that we are not talking about a career pathway program within one institution, but we are talking about a career pathway system that operates on the premise that all of the relevant institutions are in fact connected, so that our high schools and our adult basic education, our workforce training, our universities, our community colleges, our apprenticeships, and labor are all connected at the right places and at the right time for individuals who are entering into a career pathway and able to exit out, take a job, enter back into, exit out, take a job, etc. And what we've realized is that the only way for these institutions to truly come together is to operate within a shared framework. That shared framework is a target industry. It provides the only real means for real projects that these institutions can work together on. Otherwise, we spend an awful lot of time sitting on each other's boards and trying to understand and at least keep updated on the individual career pathway programs or initiatives that are happening inside individual institution walls. So without that target industry acting as the pull, if you will, for all of the individual education and training programs to get in line and align toward, it's very difficult to truly build a career pathway system. Similarly, economic development, is there a question? No, okay. Similarly, economic development historically, business attraction, it's just what it's been. And in many places, this is still the case. But luckily, what we're understanding now, again, it's a re-take-up of an old idea, and that is industry clusters. So now we have economic development entities, chambers, regional, city, county economic development organizations, understanding that, in fact, real economic development happens because, like companies still do cluster together, even in this global, virtually networked economy, companies still cluster together. It's why you have a photonics cluster in Bozeman. It's why you have food processing in Lewistown or other certain areas. There are reasons that they are concentrating together. They share markets and buyers. They share infrastructure. They share supply chains. They share technologies. And they share labor. And that is probably one of the more important ones. If you share a labor pool, it means that you have a reason to come together and understand, how do we make sure our labor pool is as highly skilled as it can be so that we don't have recruitment and retention problems, which cost us a lot of money, whether you're a small company or a large anchor firm in the middle of that regional cluster.
Hi, Jim. This is Kay Strayer. With Brian out of the office, I wanted to follow up on a job order with you.
Oh, sorry. I thought that was a question. It seems that we have somebody who's having a conversation. We could mute our line.
Situation. Calling them back, but I want to double check.
I'll take care of it, Lindsay, just a second.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
I also thought that was a question. I was kind of waiting.
Okay, so we'll move on. So I'm just trying to paint a picture here of how things have changed, really. So we've got education who is really very rapidly, as you all know, moving toward how do we build career pathway, industry-driven career pathway systems together. We have economic development who now understands, not just in rhetoric, but in reality, how important skilled labor and talent and education and training is to the core of economic development. In the meantime, you've got workforce development. And across the country, whether you're a job center or a board, quite frankly, historically, you have been about customized business training. That's like the onesies and twosies, you know, we've got some safety training, some OSHA training that has to happen for this one company, let's get on that. All very important, right? And also very traditional focus on job matching. We've got a company that has 2 vacancies over here, we need to fill that. All very important work, but very difficult work to do with limited resources. Enter sector partnerships. And so this is where you find workforce teams and staff have often become conveners of sector partnerships across the country. Now, rewind back to Matt's question earlier about other types of conveners. What we see across the country is that almost any good organization who's credible to do this work can be the convener. But you will see across the country where job center staff and workforce training staff and teams are playing this role. For a pretty clear reason, they're often just in the right place at the right time, trying to already connect industry with the right education and training. So let's just jump into a little bit of what comes out of a good sector partnership. Clearly, you get accurate training solutions because you're hearing, hopefully, if you're facilitating it correctly, the real needs from industry. Now, understand when I say facilitate, I really mean facilitate, because oftentimes, and I hear this over and over again across the country, we assume that industry has the answers, which is why we keep asking them, please tell us your workforce needs. Please tell us your training needs. We have surveys that go out. We ask them in focus groups, and we get a limited response. And part of the reason is that industry assumes you have the answer already. The reality is neither of us, whether you're an industry member or a community support partner member, has the clear answer. What has to happen is a good conversation. And it has to happen across multiple companies in a like industry, because that's where you get, frankly, to the juicy stuff around, you have that problem too? That's my most critical occupation, and my vacancy is high, or my turnover rate is high. I didn't realize this was an industry-wide thing. I didn't realize maybe this is a regional thing. There's something about our regional labor pool that we need to address together. You don't get that level of information and discussion with just surveys or a once-a-year focus group. Sector partnerships really provide the details, the root cause of some of these issues that allow you then to get to some of the training solutions you see up here. Things like clear definition and resolution of human capital issues, short and long-term training programs, improved, stronger apprenticeship programs or new apprenticeship programs, incumbent worker training, entry-level skills development and work readiness, and again, career pathway programs and systems. One thing to consider is that you often get non-training solutions as well. And by that, I mean we're still dealing with workforce issues, but they may not be training solutions. We sometimes assume a training solution too fast, when in fact, we might just need to better understand why the job description is written inaccurately. And perhaps that job description for that critical occupation across 12 different manufacturers needs to be updated. And immediately you can remove a bottleneck in the recruitment pipeline that you never knew you had. So there are lots of things like that, actually, that come out of conversations with key companies in your target industry that you would never get to if you didn't convene them together. And that's a pretty key part of a good sector partnership.
Liz, just very quickly, just to share an anecdote, you know, as we've entered into this program, we've seen exactly that happen in conversations around machining in particular. And as folks got together, really realizing that the machinist position was something that often our small business manufacturers, the owners, would be the only people capable of programming their machines. And part of the conversation then led to defining the distinction between machine operators and machinists. And it just resonated kind of perfectly with what you just said. And you know, it's just one of the examples where that kind of collaboration, I think, really pays off, and has paid off already in the last year in some of our regions.
Mm-hmm. That's a great example, and that's certainly one that I've seen and heard about in many conversations with manufacturers as well. So just quickly, this slide, I'll describe quickly for those of you who can't see it. These are just some results, and I'm going to be quite honest. These results have been used and used and used and used, as in we have been parading these outcomes out across the country for a number of years.
I think we'll get that taken care of in a second, too.
Okay. I love it. I mean, I think maybe this slide about outcomes deserves its own song or music line. So results for employers, things that we see are reductions in turnover, reductions in rework, reductions in customer complaints. We also see things like high percentages, in this case an evaluation from the state of Pennsylvania. 84% of employers surveyed from industry partnerships reported increases in productivity as a result of participating in their sector partnerships. On the worker side, job seekers and workers who participate in training and education that comes out of a strong sector partnership, they earn more per hour. We see decreases in poverty, significant decreases in poverty from 64% to 35%. We see that participants gained jobs within the target sectors, i.e. the sector that they were trained in is the sector they got a job in. That is not always the case, as you know. We see that workers earned more, stayed employed longer, were more likely to work, and worked in jobs with higher wages and better benefits. Now, the reason I said we keep parading these out across the country is not to invalidate these. These are incredible outcomes, and in fact, sector partnerships are one of the only interventions where we have control group, non-control group studies that show why they work. But we need more. This country is now at a point where sector partnerships are in fact becoming, like I said, the way we do business, whether you're a community and technical college, from the workforce investment system, or a chamber of commerce. And we need more metrics. And so that is a whole area we could spend an entire webinar on. There are sector partnerships and states, in fact, across the country who are really developing some very innovative ways to measure success. And so I want to flag that for all of you who either have a sector-like partnership up and running already, or hopefully are inspired today to go out and start one. There's some incredible work around measuring success. So very quickly, and then I do want to just open it up if there are questions. So please, folks, if you have questions, send them over or raise your hand so we can get to them. But let me go through just some examples so you can get a feel of what this stuff looks like. The Greater Metro Denver Healthcare Partnership in Colorado is a terrific example, I think, of a healthcare partnership in an urban setting. Now, Denver, of course, is a larger city than your cities in Montana, but we have examples of strong healthcare partnerships everywhere. And there are very, very rural examples, and there are really good metro examples as well. I wanted to show you this one for a couple reasons. This is an example of 4 different economic development organizations, 8 different educational institutions, 3 different, in Colorado, they have workforce investment boards at the regional level, and 7 major hospital systems, all participating in one Greater Metro Healthcare Partnership. And the reason they first came together is that these 7 major hospital systems realized that they were drawing on the same labor pool, they were stealing employees from each other, and they had really scraped bottom for a number of their critical occupations. And they could no longer just keep going to their community colleges and universities and telling them this is what we need. They had to come together to figure out what in fact is our regional need, how many cardiovascular technicians do we truly need in the next 12 months, how many BSN, nurses, RN, et cetera, how many surgical technicians. So they really started realizing that this was a metro-wide problem. And so they came together to start discussing this. They have been together now for, I think, almost 8 years. And some of the impact that has come out of the activities, their activities being prioritizing their critical occupations together and then working with their 8 different educational institutions to truly build a career pathway system. Out of that, they have 5 new education and training pathways to direct employment to jobs in middle skill and higher wage jobs. So they've truly built from the entry level up through the mid-level to some of their more advanced occupations. And they just keep going. They finish 1 round of critical occupations and they start on a new round. The impact for industry, it's been fascinating. For some of you, you may know healthcare is one of the most competitive industries out there. Maybe that surprises you. It surprised me at first. But hospitals can be more competitive with each other than manufacturers, than energy companies, than almost any industry. And so for them to really realize that they had shared problems and therefore they had shared solutions was quite an aha moment for them. And in fact, it is what has kept them together. So not only do they focus on education and training, they have found ways to also talk about cost sharing and cost reduction strategies for the greater metro area and healthcare industry. And they have regular discussions about healthcare policy. And in fact, every year they have a legislative agenda that they take to the state of Colorado. So the power of them coming together to just talk about their education needs and then realize how much more they could do, I think is testimony to what a good partnership can look like.
Lindsay, can I ask you just a quick question on that?
Sure.
So I'm just curious about the colleges' reaction. Do the colleges, have they aligned their programs in response to that? I mean, are they implementing pretty much the same programs to meet that, the demand that came out of those conversations, or are they still kind of operating independently?
They have changed quite dramatically. And it's interesting because it really has just been around healthcare. But just this year, Metro Denver launched a manufacturing partnership. And based on the healthcare experience, the colleges are much more ready, if you will, to collectively address the manufacturing needs than I think they ever would have been if they hadn't gone through the healthcare experience. And so the healthcare experience for them allowed them to truly understand what the labor market is demanding. What is it demanding now, and what will it demand in the next 12 to 24 months? Because what they were experiencing, like many places across the country, there were certain occupations that were being saturated, overly saturated with graduates. And I always say the worst thing you can do, besides not educating individuals, is to educate them and put them and their time and resources through a program only to have them not be able to get a job because you didn't pay attention as colleges to what the demand actually is. So they've been able to really pay attention to saturation levels. Stop when they're done is a pretty key part. In other words, we don't need any more cardiovascular techs, at least for another 18 months. We stop. And we advise people that that is not an occupation if they want to stay in the Metro Denver area, that they should study right now. On the other hand, we still have a skills gap of X number, for something else. So they have stayed on top of it only because they have been able to jointly listen to what the industry is demanding and move forth together. Really good question. So similarly, and I'll zip through this one, I won't spend as much time on it. This is the Northern Colorado Manufacturing Partnership. Again, I'm just trying to focus on some of the Western state examples. There are thousands of these across the country, but I like this one, and here's why. Northern Colorado, some of you may know the drive from Denver up to Fort Collins, or perhaps Laramie down to Fort Collins. It is divided by the I-25 interstate, and Weld and Larimer counties are divided by I-25. You would have thought that I-25 corridor was the Great Wall of China or the Berlin Wall, whatever. 2 years ago, you would never have seen the two community colleges on either side, the upwards of 6 relevant chambers and economic development entities, and 2 different workforce teams and job centers working together. Even though that I-25 corridor is in fact the corridor for manufacturing. And manufacturers reside on both sides, as do their workers, and they have many of the same needs. And so, Front Range Community College partnered with one of the economic development entities and also partnered with one of the workforce teams. And the 3 of them assigned staff people to co-convene the Northern Colorado Manufacturing Partnership. They now have more than 50 companies involved. They operate in committees and task groups. One is focused on talent, one is focused on supply chain, and one is focused on transportation efficiencies. They have moved very, very quickly in their less than 2-year existence. The industry members rolled up their sleeves, started mapping out supply chain. What they realized was there are suppliers right here in Larimer and Weld County that supply similar or the same products that we are drawing from overseas on. So how do we map this out, make connections so that we're increasing efficiencies, cost efficiencies, but also growing our manufacturing base at the same time? And this never happened before because nobody ever asked. This is also one of these activities that companies can roll up their sleeves and do themselves. And they will, because they're the ones who can do it quickly and with very short-term, early win results. But another big thing that they're doing is a career pathway system, because here's what they realized. They got tired, frankly, and they'll say this, of their education partners saying, help us build a career pathway, help us build a career ladder. And what they realized when they all got together was, we all have different versions of what our most critical occupations are. And so it's very difficult to put together a true career pathway. Not only that, but one of the employers, Moyer Machining, said, it's not a career pathway. It's a career solar system. It can go in lots of different directions. So incidentally, they actually contracted out to the design school at CSU, and they are creating a graphic of the actual solar system that makes up the critical occupations of manufacturing in Northern Colorado. That's the picture you see here, is that then they immediately went out within the first 6 months of their existence, and they worked with their 3 K-12 districts to have these events at the schools where folks, kids would have a passport, and they'd get their passport stamped, and they'd go to the different areas of the solar system that represented the critical occupations. In the meantime, they're also conducting some pretty in-depth skills standard focus groups with the actual workers from across the 50 manufacturers to truly understand what is it that is required to be successful on each of these jobs. This is more in-depth information than the colleges and universities and K-12 schools have ever received. It's accurate, it's timely, it's in-depth, and it is already affecting how they change curriculum, credentials, and link it together in a career pathway system. So this one is a particularly exciting one, I think, just because so much has happened so quickly. So I'm realizing that we are just about at our time, and I do want to leave time for questions. So I'm going to let you know that there are more examples, and we can certainly come back to those perhaps at another time. I have utilities examples and energy examples, more manufacturing examples. What I'd like to do is perhaps just end on what I see as a pretty big call to action that for those of you sitting on the call, no matter where you sit, whether you are with MMEC, whether you are part of the workforce system, whether you're at a community or technical college, whether you're at a university, whether you're with a community-based organization, you get it, right? You are probably getting some pressure from national dialogue that has been happening now pretty intensively for the past couple of years. You will hear the same call to action from the White House. You'll hear the same call to action from the U.S. Department of Labor, Department of Commerce, Economic Development Administration, that you are also hearing from the state of Montana, which is to build stronger partnerships with industry. So I want you to consider that this is a huge opportunity. There's also a little bit of risk involved here. And the risk is that each of you individually will go out and create strong industry partnerships. And that might sound funny, but if you can imagine, especially in smaller communities, you don't want more than one entity or organization creating a manufacturing partnership, because you will have duplicative manufacturing partnerships. And so when you imagine the map of sector partnerships across the state of Montana, you need to really think about where's the concentration of manufacturing, where's the concentration of healthcare, where's the concentration of energy, and how do we collectively as a region and as a community come together across education, training, economic development, and community organizations. This probably can include even elected officials, county commissioners, mayors. How do you collectively have the conversation about which industries are driving our local economy? It's probably manufacturing and healthcare in most of these communities. There's probably others in other communities. And have the conversation collectively about how can we either build on existing initiatives and create a robust manufacturing sector partnership together, or a healthcare partnership, or a transportation logistics partnership, et cetera. What you don't want to have happen is one community having multiple manufacturing partnerships being driven from different institutions, because basically then you have just upped the game from what you might have been doing, but still acting in silos and independently. So Matt, I'll turn it over to you for questions. I did just have kind of a quick next steps for Montana, but I'll turn it to you for any questions, and then we can close on that.
Okay, great. So we'll go to questions and then go next steps kind of right at the end?
Sure.
All right. I actually don't have, I'm not seeing notes come in if folks are writing them. And Katie might be able to see more than I can. But for folks on the call, I either invite you at this point to, open up your phone off mute and ask questions, or if you are on the WebEx platform, you can raise your hand and we'll kind of scroll through here until we've answered any questions that are out there. Liz, maybe as we're waiting for folks to initially come in, can you talk about some of the initial research that's gone in and some of the areas and kind of regions that might seem like they might be good target places to initiate activity?
Absolutely. And really, the purpose of this is all of you out there should be asking the question, do you have an existing sector partnership, or does your community? Then figure out, how do you take it to the next level, and how do you give it staying power, as I would say? How do you really explore ways to make it sustainable? If you do not have any sector activity in your region, you have a clean slate, and sometimes that's easier. And so you should really think about how to get organized, convene across your community partners, figure out what industries drive your economy, and get started. But there has been a set of conversations that I've been involved in and Matt has been leading around where is there already good stuff going on that really could go to the next level. And so part of Next Steps for Montana, building off these webinars, is actually a track of technical assistance. And so this is an opportunity, and for those of you who can see the slide, you'll see that clearly there is already some good stuff going on in lots of areas, but we've been looking at Bozeman manufacturing. We've been looking at the Central Montana manufacturing efforts, which I think are very impressive. Looking as well in the Northwest, trying to think through the different types of subsectors that make up manufacturing, how they might come together. In Billings, there's clearly energy-related manufacturing. And so those 4 areas are being targeted for further conversations and intensive technical assistance. This will look different in all of those areas. And so for those of you who are sitting in those areas right now, you should know that some of what this will involve is some early conversations with you to learn more, full-day trainings, promising practices based on the conversations we have with you, assistance with planning and design, on-site facilitation, and an implementation toolkit that, again, should be used in a customized way. These will look different in every area. We also really wanted to focus a little bit on Great Falls and Missoula because there's good manufacturing going on there, and I think some activities already where companies have been convened and you've had some good conversations. And so we've chosen Great Falls and Missoula sort of as a light technical assistance track, and so similarly, we want to have some conversations with you and figure out how can we help you take all this to the next level.
Thanks.
Lindsay, it looks like we have a question from Jackie, so I'm going to let her go ahead with that.
Great, thanks, Katie.
I actually have a few questions. My first is there a way we can get access to these slides once this presentation is over?
Yes. I think, Matt, this has been recorded, in fact. Is that correct? So they can have the recording as well as the slides?
Yeah, and we can make sure we send that out to everyone.
And then my next question is if an organization is interested in being a convener, do you have more resources on sort of how to start that conversation and then guide those types of conversations following that?
Absolutely. And Jackie, where are you from?
So I'm in Bozeman. I work with HRDC in Bozeman, just community action agency interested in developing the workforce kind of type activities.
Excellent. Okay. Yes, absolutely. And part of what we would want to provide actually is a number of tools and best practices that answer your question directly, which is how do you become and act as a good, strong convener? And part of that, as I said, is not only how do you engage and convene employers as partners, but how do you make sure you're also aligning and coordinating with the community organizations in your region and community that need to be a part of this, or who also may already be doing outreach to a target sector. So quick answer is yes, absolutely. We can get materials like that and tools like that to you.
Great, thank you.
And Liz, you might also talk a little bit during the next steps conversation about how we might identify conveners and move forward with those guys as well, just as a prequel to the next 10 minutes.
Great.
Absolutely, and actually just maybe a few more comments on that, because Matt, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, part of what I would like to do, and this is just part of the process, is we want to be able to start talking individually to individuals in each of these areas. So Bozeman, Central Montana, Kalispell, Flathead, Billings, Great Falls, Missoula. Now, we understand that there are probably other areas around the state, too, who can take advantage of some of the tools and technical assistance that we offer. And, this webinar is one way and a start to do that. But for these areas in particular, this will really be a set of conversations one-on-one with folks like you, Jackie, so getting on the phone with you, and then asking you, who do you also know? in your community and region who should be involved or are already involved. I've had pretty extensive conversations, for example, with NMEC, with Patty Fleming, who has sort of started us on the course of what's already going on, what should we know about, because a big part of good sector partnerships has to be, what do we know about what I call the strategic partner team or the support team? So before you even engage industry and employers, I want to know the Jackies out there. I want to know who are the folks from community organizations and from public programs who should be involved in a sector partnership and who could potentially be a convener. And so if there's already a sector partnership in your area, Jackie, you know, in manufacturing, for example, you should probably be engaged as a community support partner. If there is a sector partnership in another target sector that you are interested in that is not yet in existence, say healthcare or something else, let's have a conversation about that. So this will be an evolving process, I would say, pretty intensively in the next 1 month. We want to start having these individual conversations. And so part of this will be us reaching out to you, you reaching out to us. Matt probably is going to play matchmaker for a little bit of time here so that we can have the right conversations with the right folks.
Exclamation point, 32.
Other questions?
With a capital C.
Jackie, did you have more questions beyond those initial two?
No, I think that probably concludes the questions that I have.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Did I miss anything, Matt, from your perspective?
No, I think that's great. Do you want to talk any more about next steps, or do you kind of want to leave it in that spot where we'll get back to folks?
I think we'll leave it there. But again, I invite folks to also reach out to us. And there will be, the reason I said the next month is that we will be having some of these intense conversations and individual conversations. But what that is leading to is a full day training, and the date is to be determined and the location is to be determined, but there will be a full day training where these regions in particular, we will want them to bring teams of diverse community strategic support partners that can come together to one full day training that is a very hands-on, nuts and bolts. This is how to convene a sector partnership, how to expand an existing sector-like partnership, and how to be a good convener, or in some cases, a good support partner. And this will be a full-day training that we will hold for the teams representing these areas. So part of the work over the next month is going to help these areas build the right teams of folks to bring to this full-day training. Again, the day is to be determined, but we hope that it will be, I think, in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Well, with that, I would just say thank you again to everyone on the line for taking a good chunk out of your afternoon to hear from Lindsay and spend time with other folks on the phone. We look forward to getting folks more engaged. As Lindsay said, this is going to be a little bit fast and furious in terms of identifying who to get to the table, and then creating a space for that table to exist, and providing information to conveners to kind of begin this work in earnest. And we look forward to providing what support we can to get folks involved. So thank you to all of you. Lindsay, thank you for spending your afternoon with us as well. We appreciate it, and your wisdom and your willingness to help Montana get up to par with what's going on in other states and help our economy grow and flourish, hopefully. So with that, thank you to all of you, and we'll have another webinar on Wednesday if you feel like there are people from your company, industry, businesses, organizations that could benefit from hearing from Lindsay. It'll be the same, more or less, conversation we had today, but we would love to have more people involved, and the more the merrier. If you have business partners in your region that you think could benefit from this, we highly encourage you to encourage them to be a part of this as well. If you have questions that come up, or if you muse on something tonight, again, if you go to the RevUpMontana.com site, you can get a hold of us that way. You can get a hold of me that way. And my phone number is also 771-2273. Feel free to call at any point if you have questions. And with that, we'll be in touch and look forward to your involvement in the Sector Partnership Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Great
Matt.
call.